Hello, Dr. Dominique. This is.
Hello.
How are you? Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you for the invitation. And please let me, hello everyone. Hello everyone. Tell me, do you close your video or when do I open it and when do I close it?
For video?
Yes.
You can always on your video. There is no problem.
Well, okay.
No problem. Yeah. If you want to check your slide sharing or something, you can try now.
Yes.
We have.
Please. Thank you. Is it okay? You see it?
Yeah. Yes. Perfect. Perfect.
Okay. And then I will stop sharing and Laura will start sharing the second part.
Yes.
It is the same PowerPoint.
Yes. Yes.
And hola Laura.
Hola Dominique, ¿cómo estás? Buen día.
Yeah. Rebecca, Dr. Rebecca also has just joined and she will be coming back in a few minutes. Yeah.
Hi, I'm here, so.
Yeah, she is here. Yeah. I think.
Hello.
Happy to introduce you.
Hello, Rebecca. Hello.
Hello, Rebecca. Pleased to meet you.
See you.
Very happy to introduce Venkat. Here he will be the host and discussant here.
Hi, Dr. Dominique.
It is a pleasure.
Hi, Laura. Hi, Dr. Rebecca. Hi.
Hi.
Very nice to meet you. My plan is to just do a brief, like a 5-minute intro on the symposium series and the topic of today's talk. And then I hand it over to you, Dr. Rebecca first, and then to Dr. Dominique and Dr. I know Dr. Dominique and Laura have a PowerPoint. Do you also have a PowerPoint, Dr. Rebecca?
I do, yes. I've emailed it to Madame, but I can also screen share if that. Let me just have a go at that now.
Yes. Whatever you're comfortable with. If you would like Madan or me to change your slides, we can do that.
No, if I can make slide share work, then that's easier. I don't have to. You don't have to guess when I'm supposed to be changing. I just need to figure out how. That's
if you want to share, if you can check the slide sharing.
After Laura, if you want to also to try afterwards, after Rebecca.
Yes, of course, I will try.
Yeah.
Aha! Just needed to find the right screen. So yes, is that visible for everyone?
Yes, fantastic.
Yes. Good. I shouldn't have started at the end. Sorry about that.
No problem.
There we go. Right, I'll stop sharing now.
I will try now. Is that okay?
We don't see it yet?
Yes.
Okay.
And you put it in full screen?
Yes.
Laura? You put it, okay.
So after your opening remarks, we'll be gathering Q&A from the attendees. And then we, Madan and myself will be greedy at the beginning and pose our questions. Any or all of you may respond, and then we will sort of do the moderated Q&A from the attendees.
So we are in London, Bangalore, and Buenos Aires?
Yes.
What time is it in London, Rebecca?
It's 12, just coming up to 1 o'clock lunchtime.
Good.
And in Buenos Aires?
It's nearly 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Morning, afternoon, and evening.
Yes, that's it. Are you going to put the PowerPoints in the web page of the webinar program? Are you planning to?
Yes, along with the video, we will do the editing after this video recording is done. Then we will do some editing,
Yes.
Then with video and presentation together, we will publish it. I will let you know once this is ready.
Okay, because in CLACSO we want to share it. Laura has already published it in CLACSO's webpage, and we want to share it in the social networks with the link to your webpage too. So we will wait and when you tell us. I see we have someone from Republika Moldova, librarian. Interesting.
Yeah.
In the chat.
Yes.
Good, welcome, Elena.
And my cat has sat right down on the script of my paper, so I'll distract it from under her. But if she appears in my video, I think she feels like she should be involved.
Yes. All our cats and dogs are part of our professional activity in this last year. and son and daughter also, and husband.
Richard Pointer has just joined Dominique.
Sorry?
Richard Pointer.
Oh, Richard is there.
Yeah.
Hello, hello, where is, I want to. Well,
hello, Dominique.
Good. Hi, Richard. Thank you so much. Your following you is so inspiring and so challenging. Your articles and your analysis about open access advocacy and our role and what we do well and what we do wrong. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for tweeting about it.
Yes, but thank you so much about the way you're putting some challenges to us. Very interesting. It was very interesting to read your book about information has to be free. Thank you very much, Richard.
Okay, thanks, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say today.
Thank you, Richard.
Venkat? Yeah, Venkat, we can start. It's 6:35. Begin.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the third edition of the online symposium series on open access to humanities and social sciences information organized by the Azim Premji University. The topic of today's symposium is open access to humanities and social sciences research, perspectives from Latin America and the United Kingdom. I am Venkat Nadella. I am a policy research fellow at the DST-Centre for Policy Research at the Indian Institute of Science. I'll be a host, discussant, and moderator this afternoon. The symposium series is organized with the premise that access to multidisciplinary information is key to humanities and social sciences research, and to shed light on the structural constraints in knowledge production, as well as the opportunities provided by and the challenges thereof of the global open access movement as they apply to researchers, HSS researchers in India. We have professors and scholars from academia, both universities as well as our various research institutions, policy makers from various forms of governments and governance structures, librarians from Indian institutions participate in the series. The first two symposiums provided a very broad discussion on the status of scholarly communication and publishing trends in social sciences and humanities, respectively. They were separate events. After searching far and wide for speaker panelists to shed light on the very important aspects of open access in humanities and social sciences, we are very glad to have found three of the most distinguished speakers addressing us today and sharing their expertise with us. First, we have Dr. Rebecca Darley from Birkbeck, University of London. And we have Dr. Dominique Babini from the Latin American Council of Social Sciences, or CLACSO. And we have Dr. Laura Rovelli from the Latin American Forum of Research Assessment, FOLEC-CLACSO. We will begin our event with structured opening remarks from the three panelists, followed by a moderated discussion with the panelists. As attendees, your contributions are important not only in providing context to the discussion as it applies to your scenario in India and your research, but also in identifying the salient issues as they pertain to the opportunities and challenges to open access community or movement in humanities and social sciences in India. So please type your questions in the Q&A chat box below in the Zoom interface, and we will take them up after the opening remarks from the speakers. I'm glad to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Rebecca Darley. She is currently a senior lecturer in medieval history at Birkbeck, University of London. She is a co-author of the British Academy report on the possible impact of UK's open access policies on humanities and social sciences subjects. The report, published in 2014, has resulted in changes to the government policy. In her talk today, titled Open Access in Humanities and Social Sciences in the United Kingdom, the conflict between big ideas and small communities, she is going to reflect on the global and the local context of open access, the various forms that open access takes as they apply in the UK, and also about the role of small publishers, especially learned society journals in the United Kingdom, publishing, and the unresolved conflict between ideological support and the practicalities in publishing. Over to you, Dr. Darley, whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. Hang on a second while I share screen. Not sure why this. Sorry, for some reason on my computer, whenever I go onto this, it takes a little bit of a time for the computer to register. Here we go. Register my PowerPoint program. So hopefully everyone can see that. Good evening. Thank you for that very generous introduction, and thank you for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be able to participate in the seminar series. As I was saying in the chat at the beginning, it's been some years since I've worked particularly on open access, but since participating in the British Academy report, it has definitely remained an interest and is a set of debates and considerations that I follow. Coincidentally, my own research area as a medievalist is also Southern India. So in this respect, I'm keenly interested in the ways in which sharing my research in my specialist field is affected by these debates. I won't talk about that in this paper, but it made it all the more important when I received your invitation to be part of it. Thank you very, very much. So, as has been said, in 2014, I was the co-author of a report commissioned by the British Academy, which is a non-governmental body in the UK that exists to represent the interests of scholars working specifically in the humanities and social sciences on the subject of open access. It functions, the British Academy functions to allocate funding, particularly from charitable grants, but it also exists as a lobby group for humanities and social sciences scholars. And this evening, as has been said, I'm going to discuss some of the context for that report, and that will involve some discussion of the different open access models that the UK government by default promotes these days, as well as the connection of open access to government evaluations of research institutions, which I think is really critical to understanding the situation here in the UK and how open access fits into it. I'll then talk about some of the consequences of our report for UK open access policy, and then our two main conclusions, both specifically in the context of the UK. The first of those, briefly, is that open access policies, if not handled properly, pose by far the greatest threat not to large-scale publishers whose eye-watering profit margins arguably sort of kicked off a lot of the open access debate, but to the opposite, to small, highly valued, often learned society journals that are critical to the history, the community, and the infrastructure in which our research takes place. The other conclusion was that publishing in the humanities and social sciences is not free. This is not a radical thing to say, but one of the things that our report reflected on is the extent to which it is often sidelined in debates, particularly at the level of government policy. Even laying aside the cost of labour in producing the research, and I'm not intending to divert into a discussion about academic lifeways or workloads, there are costs involved in copy editing, proofreading, editorial directing of journals, all of which are critical to maintaining high output standards free. There are also discipline-specific costs that our report highlighted, such as copyright permissions for images, that lie outside the purview of universities or governments to set aside. Online publication reduces some of these costs, but it doesn't remove them. Thus, in my conclusion, I'm going to pose questions rather than provide answers, but they're questions to which I don't think there are yet sufficient answers in the context of the UK, and which I hope will promote fruitful discussion of how this could be improved and how that relates to a more globally engaged academy. Because another feature of a lot of UK open access debates is that they are largely concerned with a UK audience. So first, the context of our report. In 2013, the British Academy called urgently for a review of the possible impact of proposed changes to open access policy on humanities and social sciences scholarship produced in the UK. This urgency was the result of several factors. First, there was global anger, but I think as we as practicing academics and as the people I met in the British Academy commissioning this report understood it, this was particularly coming out of angry debates in the United States at revelations that were then recent, or at least recently in the public eye, concerning the staggering profit margins enjoyed by major academic publishers, most notably Elsevier, at the same time that those presses were charging universities and public libraries hundreds of thousands of dollars or pounds in annual subscription for content. As you can see, the debate is very much ongoing. The other factor was the institution in 2008 of a roughly 7-yearly audit of university research work by the UK government. This was originally called the Research Assessment Evaluation, or RAE, and is now called the Research Excellence Framework, REF or REF, and was about to take place in 2013-14 and is now taking place again. REF 2021 has been slightly delayed by the pandemic. We're expecting the results in 2022. So in 2013, the UK government was finalising the rules of submission by which REF 2014 would be judged. And the British Academy was concerned by the suggestion of last-minute changes to open access rules and to the suggestion of longer-term open access rules and the impact those might have on the subsequent 8 years of research output. I will talk in more detail about exactly what those implications were. But in terms of just the background to the report, the third major factor was a growing ideological support for open access in UK higher education, among scholars, among students, to a certain extent among the public, but considerable confusion among academics, publishers, and more widely about what exactly open access might mean. The British Academy felt that these could all be addressed with a targeted study, but I would say that factor 2 was probably the most important and certainly drove the direction of our research. What were the implications of this going to be for REF, for the research audit that takes place in the UK? As a result of that, we decided, in the context of a very tight deadline, to address only the issue of journal publications. This is because UK government regulations, then as now, indicated that monographs and edited book chapters would not be included in any open access policies affecting REF. And within the context of journal articles, we decided to tackle 3 main questions. First, of the 2 models supported by the UK government, so-called gold and green open access, which would best suit publishing in the humanities and social sciences? This part of the report was based mainly on analysis of published discussions and information about great grant-based research funding in the UK. So it was all really derived from information already in the public arena and that we compiled and analysed. Second, how many journals regularly used by UK-based academics already had open access policies in 2013, and what were they? In order to do this, we compiled a list of all journals to which people included in the 2008 research assessment evaluation had submitted work under the humanities and social sciences subject umbrellas. Then we contacted these journals to ask them about their open access policies. And we got in some very, very interesting correspondence about that, which I think for me was probably one of the most illuminating and enjoyable parts of the whole project. Finally, we asked the question, how long did humanities and social sciences articles stay live or relevant after publication? And as I'll talk about in a moment, this is critical to understanding the benefits and difficulties with green versus gold open access publication. We did this by looking at citation records for a sample of journals from our original list, in other words, the list of journals to which UK academics contributed. Our ability to do this was limited to journals that could and were willing to provide those citation figures. And for that, we are very, very grateful to Wiley Blackwell, Cambridge University Press, and Taylor Francis in particular, who provided the substantial bulk of data for us to analyse. As I've said, all of this was critical and of immediate importance because of the implications of the REF. And those implications are quite serious. This evaluation exercise, which remains extremely controversial today, involves several steps, and its exact parameters have changed with every iteration and have changed regularly within each iteration as new government reports and modifications emerge. So it often feels a little bit like you're playing a constant game in which the rules are changed arbitrarily, exactly as you've got all of your ducks in a row, if I may mix my metaphors. However, the process roughly goes like this. The government, having called for a REF, which should be every 7 years, establishes panels for all major subject areas and nominates expert readers, usually senior academics, often retired senior academics in those fields. There's then a little bit of jostling as interdisciplinary areas, smaller fields, and individual researchers in departments whose research profile is a little bit different, all decide which of these major panels they're going to submit to. Then, higher education institutions are required to select eligible publications by all of their research active staff. That is anybody whose contract entails an element of research. Those publications are submitted to the government panels and are evaluated on a 1 to 4 star scale based on their perceived quality and importance. The highest rank is 4 star, meaning that the research is evaluated as being world leading, while 1 star is the lowest, which deems the work to be of only limited importance. And I will just flag up, and I'm happy to discuss in questions, that all of this evaluation is based not primarily on the rigor of the work so much as its potential significance. And I think that also matters in the context of REF and open access. What it's really evaluating is who the research matters to and how much, rather than it being an evaluation of things like its competence as a piece of research. Finally, the ranks awarded to publications, along with a few other measures, such as the wider research environment at a university, are used to rank all UK universities based on their quality as research institutions. Finally, government funding for research is then allocated according to this ranking, with higher ranked institutions receiving more funding. The ranking is also used extensively in advertising to prospective students and affects the outcome in applications for other non-governmental funding. So this really matters. It has had a dramatic effect on university hiring in the UK since 2008, as institutions try to hire people just before an evaluation who may have lots of publications, and in some cases, let people go after the evaluation is done, after they've got what they needed from them. If you talk to an academic in the UK today, phrases like "I'm ref ready" or "I've got what I need for the next ref" will come up in conversation a lot. So will more anxious comments like "the publishers have had my article for ages, I'm not sure if it'll be out in time for ref." Now, the proposed change going back to 2013 that had caused the British Academy such concern was this. Responding to an open access agenda in the public sphere more widely, the government had proposed that any articles not published in open access format would be excluded from the ref evaluation process. This risked many individuals not having enough outputs to contribute to ref, with likely consequences for the continuation of their contracts or their chances of career development. It also left institutions at risk of not having enough work to submit in some fields, and therefore potentially losing out on research funding for the next 8 years. So what did the government mean by open access when it suggested that change? Well, then as now, UK government strategy has focused on two models. Gold open access, referring to work that is freely available to everybody at the point of publication. Rarely, this is paid for directly by journals due to their own ideological commitments, but most often it's achieved by authors paying the journal for the cost of processing their article. And I apologise that many of you will know this intimately. But so-called article processing charges at the time we wrote the report were around £1,300 to £2,000 per article. They have gone up slightly, I understand now. Green open access refers to work that is made freely available after a certain period behind a paid-for firewall. The idea behind this model being that journals can recoup the costs of publishing the article in the first few years while people are paying for subscriptions before making the research openly accessible. An important sub-question that our report addressed was how long this period should be in order for an article to count as open access. We contacted at least one journal that informed us, apparently with a straight face, that all of their articles were open access because a century after publication, they would automatically become available to the public. The results of our analysis were roughly as follows on this last question. Gold open access publishing is really not a viable option for humanities and social sciences scholars in the UK. This is the most common route followed by STEM subjects in the UK because in the UK, as elsewhere, STEM articles are usually published in the context of large funding grants, and it's become common for grant applications to include money for article processing charges. And when I say large grants, I'm talking orders of magnitude of minimum tens, usually hundreds of thousands, and at times millions of pounds. By contrast, humanities and social science publications are usually produced without grant aid. Where grants are awarded, they're often very small, perhaps a few hundred or a couple of thousands of pounds to pay for travel to complete research or to visit a library or museum collection. Institutions, which are also increasingly financially stretched, cannot make up this difference for their staff. So if gold open access were to have been a compulsory model, humanities and social science scholars would effectively have been required to pay an average of £1,500 of their own money for each of their articles that they published. Green open access was therefore the model we pursued and discussed in our report as being the most viable for humanities and social sciences. We showed that based on citation and viewing figures, most humanities and social sciences research does have quite a long half-life, or the time it remains valid and interesting based on figures of how people read it, after its production. A 2 to 5 year period behind a paid-for firewall would not, we argued then, have the same damaging effect on humanities and social science research as it would in STEM subjects, where research may become obsolete much, much faster. In the context of REF, which is really concerned only with the UK context, paid firewalls were also not perceived as that much of a problem, since most university libraries in the UK pay for subscriptions. So within the university environment, researchers would have access to publications at point of production in any case. This is, of course, tangential to the wider ideological debates about open access, but where these do and don't meet in government policy is, I think, one of the really interesting things about the UK landscape. What happened then? Well, currently, the rules of open access for me as a practicing academic in a UK institution in the humanities and social sciences are roughly as follows, and the answer is always roughly, because we're always waiting for the next report that may change things slightly. All journal articles submitted to REF should be open access where possible. This does not include books or edited volumes. They can be submitted to the REF without being open access. And it should be said that the sense of freedom to publish anything that is not refable is declining year by year. There are no incentives to do so, and so we do it less and less. Open access can mean gold or green open access, although for me as a humanities and social sciences scholar, it only means green, and firewalls should in general be 5 years or less. In addition to any open access policies by the publishing journal, all journal articles submitted for REF must be made available on the institutional repository of the university submitting the work for consideration, and that means that a preprint copy of the article, the author-accepted manuscript, must be made available on the institutional repository within 3 months of it being accepted by the journal. These institutional repositories are open access, but they are not easily searchable. There's no central database of them, for example. And they usually don't hold the final paginated version of published articles. Thus, the research there can be read, but often can't be cited from these copies because issue number, page numbers, minor proofing changes, even year of publication are not included. For certain disciplines, these institutional copies are even less useful. For art history or archaeology, for example, publishers can request that all copyright images, for which expensive permissions have often been paid, be blacked out. This can be annoying in some cases, but for certain articles makes the argument functionally unusable. Journals can also refuse permission for a work to be placed in the institutional repository or ask that it not be made available until the journal's own paywall expires, in which case we as academics perform our duty by putting it in the repository, and then the repository doesn't make it available to the public. The biggest concession granted directly as a result of our report in 2014, and which remains true today, is that an author can choose to publish their work in any journal, regardless of its open access status, if they can argue that this is the best location for their work to engage in debate. And that really brings me to the two big conclusions that emerged from our project, neither of which we had necessarily expected going into it. Our first conclusion was that most in danger from the UK government's drive for open access were not the big publishing houses. Many of them had already developed policies that would at least nominally comply with legislation as it was changing, and were and remain well equipped in terms of legal advice and internal economies of scale to change with the times or to advocate for their requirements. Instead, most at risk are the smaller journals, often associated with learned societies, that frequently run with little or no professional editorial support. These are journals that often have shaped whole fields of endeavour and continue to constitute intellectual communities. When we contacted several of these journals in 2013, they informed us then that they didn't have any open access policies, and in some cases weren't even aware of the open access debate. Now, this may seem quaint, but these are publications that don't have access to the kinds of resource that professional publishing houses do. In many cases, they're run entirely by volunteers. Their concerns are exactly what it says on the journal cover: the archaeology of Ireland, numismatics, papyrology. They are not necessarily interested in engaging with policy debate at this level. Those that had thought about open access, which was the majority of them, also told us that anything other than green open access with quite a long firewall, 5 years or more, would have very serious consequences for their revenue stream. They estimated, and we agreed, that there was zero chance that authors would pay article processing charges to publish with them. None of us can afford it. That left people paying subscriptions for their journals. Now, often learned societies make most of their revenue from the sale of their journals to libraries and from membership dues, which crucially are paid in return for members getting an annual copy of the journal. These revenues are in turn ploughed into activities which directly benefit research, such as small grants, conferences, and seminar series. Open access legislation that prevented these societies from making their living, or excluded university academics from publishing in them by making the journals non-referable, and thereby lowering the intellectual merit of the journal and the society, stand to me as a clear potential harm within any debate about open access policy in the UK that should be avoided. My own particular example is that of the Journal of the Royal Numismatic Society, the Numismatic Chronicle, begun in 1838. I'm a member of the society, I have published in it, I've served as a council member of the society, I've spoken in depth with the journal editors, and much of my work has been supported by small grants, again, those grants of a couple of £100 here and there, that make a crucial difference to the ability to undertake research. But talking with the editors about their deep anxiety about the impact of a blanket open access policy on how the journal operates, and the journal is responsible for considerably more than 50% of the society's overall revenue, one way or another, I was very conscious that many societies operate in exactly the same way. There is also a significant threat to the participation of UK-based academics in focused international debate from any kind of blanket policy that required open access publication venues. The danger of this varies strongly from subject to subject, but particularly affects scholars working on areas or fields where there is currently not much incentive towards open access publishing. For example, and this was a particular concern by one of my co-authors, Professor Chris Wickham, the open access debate as of 2013 had not had very much impact in Italy. I don't think it still has, although it's certainly become a more public topic of discussion. And particularly in the field of archaeology, many journals are run by tiny local publishing houses, municipalities or universities, on small budgets and with no interest and no local incentives towards developing open access policies. These journals are, however, precisely the venues where in certain fields it is necessary to be published in order to be known by one's peers, to build up early career networks and to contribute to discussion. That's why our concession that authors could, if necessary, choose to publish wherever best fits their work, regardless of open access, was so important. It provides, at least for now, a continued space for exactly those players who operate to bring diversity to our publishing landscape, and to help mitigate, and who help mitigate against the relentless push in the UK towards metrification. Learned Society and other small journals are often not indexed. They do not participate in impact factor rankings. And so in many, many ways, they help to preserve a space for intellectual debate that is not undermined by statistical fetishization and by the dominance of large presses and a broadening, but at the same time, often a rendering towards the superficial of academic debate that comes from the loss of very small, very specific, very subject-generated publishing locations. The second important conclusion reached in our report is that there is a fallacy, implicit or otherwise, in much policy making in the UK, that publishing, at least online, is essentially free. We found in our research that many advocates in the UK of a hard government policy in favour of open access treated the costs of publishing as a fiction, invented by the major publishing houses to defend their profit margins. This was a tendency exacerbated by the fact that many older, smaller, learned society journals do not, in fact, pay anybody for most of the work associated with their production. This isn't because there is no labour involved, though, but because specific conventions about academic labour have historically not considered this kind of work to be worth reimbursing. Editing, proofreading, peer reviewing, even typesetting are often done free of charge for these small presses by practicing academics or volunteer society members. But this is not a sustainable model. With demands on time becoming tighter and tighter and teaching loads increasing, no professional reward in terms of prestige or promotion accrues to this kind of service. Fewer and fewer people can afford to give their time in this way. I'm not suggesting for one moment that crazy profit margins, sometimes over 200%, recorded by large presses are justifiable in these terms. But the contrast is not a cost-free utopia. Indeed, it may be more necessary than ever that we properly reimburse people who give their time to publications in order to maintain high-quality academic research outputs. And in certain fields, there are other costs of publishing that are completely out of the hands of the press or the government, but still significant. I'm thinking here particularly of licensed art images or images of artifacts in archaeological and historical journals. Licensing such images for reproduction, again in the UK, is often an important part of the revenue stream of other underfunded institutions, like galleries and museums, and their costs can be quite high. The costs and licenses will frequently exclude the possibility for full online open access reproduction, or charge much, much higher fees for this option because it effectively releases the image from the control of its owning institution. In disciplines where such resources are a requirement, the copyright costs for an article might run into hundreds or even thousands of pounds, even before any editorial or review work has been done. A recent article of mine cost over £1,200 in licensing fees. Here too, an open access policy that does not address where the money will come from unfairly damages scholars working in particular disciplines and at certain career stages. For a professor, £1,200 from research expenses may not be very much. At another career stage, it certainly might. And at different institutions, considering the support that they offer. And it risks damaging that wider research infrastructure that we all used to take for granted. So in 2014, this left us able to wrangle a couple of important concessions that I've already raised, and it left us with several larger questions. And these are the questions that I continue to follow, continue to find fascinating, but to which, as yet, I have not seen answers that feel realistic to me as an HSS scholar working in the UK. So it's these that I would like to conclude with. Who should pay for the production of research articles? And I'm not here talking about the production of the research, but the nuts and bolts of producing them as published outputs. Who is the readership for open access material? This was something that we discovered when we began writing our report. The government, at least, had not thought very hard about. Regional solutions, for example, such as a European or US-wide access block, have been one set of proposals. And they may work very well if we assume that the main readership for open access is an interested public located mainly in the region where research is produced. But blocks like that, I would say, work very badly if we assume that the research readership is fellow scholars globally, who may not have access to the same subscriptions due to regional differences in resource, priority, or visibility. For them, regional blocks of open access, a European open access forum or a US open access environment, will in fact deepen the exclusions and the divisions that currently make global and international research especially difficult. And how do we create an open access environment that enables small publishers to thrive if we believe, as I firmly do, that they bring enormous benefit to our academic environment above and beyond simply the production of written work? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rebecca, for sharing your experiences with the detailed study that you have conducted and in sharing two very concrete conclusions from your study, both for the size of the publishing houses, the relative importance they place, as well as drawing conclusions for funding, as well as research assessment. The next two speakers, we do have some questions rolling in, but before I introduce the next two speakers, I would just like to give a short housekeeping announcement. Please type your questions in the Q&A or the chat box below in the Zoom interface. And once the panelists have made their opening remarks, we would pose their questions. Thank you, Dr. Rebecca. I would like to introduce next Dr. Dominique Babini, who is the Open Science Advisor at the Latin American Council of Social Sciences, or CLACSO, and Dr. Laura Rovelli, who is the coordinator of the Latin American Forum of Research Assessment in the international context of sustainable development goals research agendas, as well as advancements in open science policies and their respective practices around the world. Social science and humanities research produced and published within developing countries make an important contribution. And in this context, where Indian HSS researchers are very interested, Doctors Dominique Babini and Laura Rovelli are active agenda setters and researchers, and they will describe how Latin America has advanced in the past 2 decades under their leadership with open access policies and initiatives that are collaborative, publicly funded, non-profit, and describe the role of FOLEC and CLACSO in the promotion of these much needed review of quality, grounded, relevant research evaluation procedures. Over to you, Dr. Dominique and Dr. Laura, when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Venkat, Nadella, and Madam Hutu. I will share my screen. This presentation will be available in the website of this seminar. CLACSO, the Latin American Council of Social Sciences, wishes to thank the Azim Premji University and the Center for Policy Research for this invitation to CLACSO. We want to share our experience in Latin America. One moment, I have difficulty in sharing. Well, if we look at the challenges of the Sustainable Development Goals, social sciences and humanities from our regions have as much local research outputs of interest for these sustainable goals than has the international research contributions. So we have to think how to make visible and accessible our local contributions to this global agenda. If we look at the draft of the preliminary recommendations of UNESCO for open science, we hope this preliminary recommendations will remain in the final version of the recommendations at the end of the year. But we see that it is expected from open access to extend collaboration with other social actors beyond the scientific community. It is expected to have bibliodiversity to ensure equity among researchers from developed and developing countries, to have diversified information technology, community-based solution as well as commercial initiatives. So all these priorities give opportunities for social scientists. This is why we need this kind of symposiums and discussions to see how social sciences and humanities can ensure that it has a place in the future of open access, which is within open sciences. In the particular case of Latin America, we are a region where open access and open science are managed by the scholarly community as a commons. Latin America is the most advanced region in the world as percentage of its research publications being in open access. And the open access policies and legislations being approved in our region prioritize open access repositories. So we have a strong non-commercial infrastructure where scientific publishing belongs to the academic institutions. 8 years back, in a meeting with 23 countries from Latin America, both open access venues were supported. Green open access as a collaborative initiative, and gold open access with no APCs, which already at that time was seen as unaffordable, and now more even. And in support of collaborative non-APC initiatives as the indexing regional portals we have. What about social sciences? Well, half of the PhD graduates in Latin America are in the social sciences, and 25% of researchers. And 45% of the active journals in our region are in social sciences. Why is this? Because 80% of the articles social scientists publish in our region are published in journals within the region, in quality journals within the region. But those quality peer-reviewed journals are not taken in consideration by Web of Science or Scopus, which have a very poor representation, very poor, of social sciences and humanities from our region. So the challenge we had the past 20 years, and we still have these challenges, is as journals are mainly published by universities and other social science and humanities research institutions, no outsourcing to commercial publishers, we had to, and no APCs, we had to build quality within mainly the universities and the societies. With the help of Open Journal System, which is used by 2,500 journals in our region, and building collections of quality journals within the universities. UNAM, the Autonomous University of Mexico, Universidad de San Pablo in Brazil, Universidad de Chile, they all have collections, and Universidad de La Plata in Argentina, they all have collections of more than 100 journals published by each of those universities. And then we have national collections of quality journals, which help select where to publish and which journals to support. And we have regional indexing services for journals that train editors and editorial teams. We have Redalica Melica, who also has an experience with journal from India. And we have Cielo, and we have Latin Index Catalog. And also subject repositories contribute. CLACSO's repository in social science and humanities has a collection of journals, and together with Redalic, we have a collection of 1,000 social science and humanities journals. Social science and humanities research output published in institutional repositories are harvested by national systems of repositories, which are themselves harvested by a Latin American harvester of digital repository, which is called La Referencia. And La Referencia interacts with OpenAIRE in Europe and other networks of repositories worldwide. What is this? The case of CLACSO. CLACSO is a network of research, social science and humanities research institutions. In India, we have as members the India Council of Social Science Research. In social sciences in Latin America, books are important also. And CLACSO's network has about 3,000, more than 3,000 open access books. They are in CLACSO's repository with Dublin core metadata, which can be harvested with the Open Access Initiative protocol for metadata harvesting. So they are full-text open access. And then in the repository, which is 20 years old, We have all kind of bibliodiversity, yes, and 20% of the journals in this portal are indexed, but many journals were not even available, as Rebecca mentioned. We have to save small publishers. So in our repository, we have many publications which are not indexed and not in the main circuit. We have about 100,000 full texts which are searchable and which are can be harvested by anyone in the world. And very important, in the past 20 years, we have been sending twice a month communications to about 1,000 people who are part of the teams, the editorial teams and the library teams of our member institutes worldwide, but in the region mainly, and sharing good practices and trends in open access and now also in open science. We also have with Rovelli a collection they manage of more than 1,000 social science and humanity journals from Iberoamerica. Those journals receive from Rovelli training, tools for XML processing of the journals, bibliometric and centrometric indicators to help them position and their journals. And it's curious, in a survey among social scientists, they consider Cielo and Rovelli, those are the indexing services in Latin America, have more value among researchers than Web of Science and Scopus. So this is very interesting. And how Rebecca mentioned, who are the reader? Who is the readership? Who are the readers? This is a very interesting study from Juan Pablo Alperin, who did his PhD in Stanford University, and now he's in Simon Fraser University. He's with PKP also. And 50% of the readership are students. So these resources in open access in Latin America, in social sciences and humanities, are preparing the next generation of social scientists and social science professionals who are in practice. It's a very interesting study. And it also is used by professional practice and personal use, but 75% is academic use. Which are our main concerns now? Our main concerns refer to underfunding of community-owned infrastructure worldwide, because funds are each time more directed to APCs, and with Plan S, it will be more, even more. So we have to improve and promote this kind of international sharing of experiences and collaborations to strengthen community-led, non-commercial open access. Because the developing world has very little possibilities to participate in a global conversation ruled by APCs. And the last point in my part of the presentation is that in our regions, researchers are rewarded when they publish in English in mainstream journals, run by the prestige, with indicators by the prestige in industry. This makes invisible our research outputs. We need to reward quality and relevance, independent of the publication value. And if we evaluate publication value, we have to reward quality and not prestige of the journals, quality. And we should reward our researchers when they undertake, which is not done today, when they undertake evaluation, peer review of contents within our repositories that do not have peer review. There are many contents in our repositories which do not have peer review because it has not been published in a journal, in a peer review journals. And we could reward researchers who help us build what CORE calls the next generation repositories with a layer of peer review within the repositories. That needs to be built. What happens with research assessment? Please now, Laura Rovelli, coordinator of the Latin American Forum for Research Assessment, will continue our presentation from CLACSO. I leave you, Laura.
Thank you very much, Dominique. Thank you also to the DST-Centre for Policy Research for this invitation. Thank you to Madame Mutu, to Venkat and Nadella, and it is a pleasure also to share this space with Rebecca Darley and her very interesting report. So I will continue sharing the screen with this question that Dominique pointed and try to answer this question through the actions that the Latin American Forum for Research Assessment, the FOLEC from CLACSO, has been working on. As I was saying, what about research assessment is a key question in the social sciences and humanities and its impact in open access scholarly communications. Through our research in the scheme of the FOLEC, we have identified 7 challenges in research assessment to expand open access in social science and humanities, knowledge production and circulation. These 7 challenges, the first one has to do with the review of the incentives from science and technology agencies and institutions to publish in impact factors journals. As it was said, international and regional declarations and researchers have warned that research assessment policies built on incentives or indicators based on the impact factors of international indexed journals limit the local autonomy of research agendas, discourage good open access practices, and research in interaction with society through its decontextualization and dereferencing. As regards quality and quantitative assessment, we consider from the FOLEC, from CLACSO, that there must be a balance. Expected societal impacts in social science and humanities should be specified and assessed either in a qualitative and quantitative way or both. There must be a principle of proportionality. Assessments should match the character and goals of the research under evaluation and the role that the researchers aim to play in society. Third, as regards inclusivity, in Latin America, the participation of traditionally excluded groups, such as women who are underrepresented in hierarchical positions in the academia, but also indigenous or Afro-descendant peoples in the region must be represented both in research assessment processes and in academic and research projects. Also, this inclusivity must be extended to the participation of regions or research institutions with less well-established research capacities. We consider that attention should be paid to those evaluations as instruments to promote increasing collaboration with civil society. So the question might be, how can progressive research assessment facilitate funding schemes and decisions that promote more inclusive research systems through the participation of these traditionally excluded groups, regions, institutions. As regards local and regional databases, well, Dominique has mentioned that in Latin America, we need to promote the creation and use of a diversity of databases that reflect both the production disseminated in international repositories as well as in regional and databases. So we need to strengthen these interoperable databases from our region and from our institutions in order to show and to be more worthy all the publications that Latin America has in this circuit of in this non-commercial circuit. Also, as regards multilingualism, we consider from the FOLEC, from CLACSO, that there might be a balance between locally relevant research in local languages, including regional and indigenous languages, with research which has global relevance and is globally communicated and disseminated. As regards bibliodiversity, we are working on the promotion of an eco-diversity in social science publications and evaluation systems as an added value, considering, for example, the long tradition of book publishing in our disciplines and the need to strengthen and reward researchers in the peer review also of books in our sciences. And last, another issue has to do with high quality research and its link with social relevance. You know that in order to achieve sustainable development goals of the 2030 agenda of the United Nations, specific instruments to cope simultaneously with environmental and social problems were developed in the global south and recently related to big critical issues such as COVID-19. And these instruments try to face the challenge of supporting science that is both quality relevant and also relevant with the priorities of national science funding agencies. But in this point, the use of data from international databases like Scopus or WAS for the design and implementation of these policies is strongly contested for not being a useful tool for sustainable development, the expansion of open scholarship, and situated and local knowledge production. Unfortunately, it persists this kind of use of data information from these databases, distorting the design of adequate assessments methodologies and priority setting exercises. Besides the mainstream metrics for judging research quality, make disciplinary excellence prevail through an elusive concept of excellence, discouraging social relevance criteria and meaningful research development. So from FOLEC, we consider that we have to work in our region to recover science with social relevance and quality from an inclusive perspective and from a plurality of approaches.
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Laura, your slides are not changing. I just want to flag.
Sorry, yes, there. Can you see it there? Yeah. So as I was saying, from CLACSO, FOLEC, our initiative looks forward to all the voices, all the formats and perspectives of knowledge production and circulation. In our site, you can download 3 materials that had to do with a proposal of a declaration of principles to change the present research evaluation in our region, and also a diagnosis and proposals for a regional initiative in our region. As regards the actions taken internationally, in 2020, the FOLEC made 2 regional and 1 international consultation with specialists and research assessment specialists around the world. Also, the FOLEC was recognized among 15 international mobilizers and defining responsible evaluation of research by the report of the Global Research Council, and the FOLEC is in the list of globally outstanding initiatives to promote evaluation of research in 2020, prepared by the San Francisco Declaration of Research Assessment, DORA. And FOLEC has been working and collaborating with the DORA Advisory Board and now in its steering committee. Also from FOLEC, we have been participating in the first regional consultation of UNESCO recommendation on open science. And we think as a network of more than 700 research institutions in 52 countries of the Global South, that we have a unique opportunity to address these concerns by reviewing evaluation procedures and making a transition to open science practices in our region, producing new data and analysis that can contribute to strengthen science systems, open access, and opportunities for engagement by a wider society in scientific research process. At present, FOLEC has 30 allied organizations and institutions of science, technology, and higher education that are participating in our space. I would like to recover, as regards other initiatives from other international initiatives, we should consider, for example, other initiatives in research assessment, we should consider the collaboration that DORA made last year with the European University Association SPARC, developing a digital repository of 10 case studies that examine particularly research assessment around the world. Also, the Global Research Council organized a virtual conference on responsible research assessment last November 2020 to explore the research ecosystem and to try to strengthen these principles and guidelines that I was mentioning before. Also, a new Chinese national policy directs institutions not to use the number of papers a researcher has published or their citations as the sole criteria for recruitment or promotion. Besides, the Hong Kong principles for assessing researchers would include valuing completing reports regarding the practice of open science, acknowledging a broad range of research initiatives, and recognizing essential other tasks like peer review and mentoring have been seen initial and endorsed by 15 institutions in 2020. And last, we have different research funders like the Dutch Research Council, the Irish Council, the Swiss National Science Council, that are adopting the use of narrative civic formats to balance quantitative and qualitative assessment. So as you can see, fortunately, research assessment is in the international and Latin American also agenda, and the idea is to work together with the open access movement in order to nourish and strengthen these policies from the national scientific and technology agencies. The next steps from the agenda of the FOLEC for 2021 are a common proposal on research assessment reform to be presented at the 9th CLACSO's Latin American and Caribbean Social Science Conference, and at that conference, which is called Patterns of Equality in Latin America and the Caribbean, Knowledge, Struggles and Transformations. One of the main axes of the conference is science, technology and society, challenges of knowledge and evaluation, which will include a special session for regional and international debate. Then also we are working in a project that is called the Evaluation of Research in Change, Inclusion in Scientific Systems, and projects oriented to specific missions in research funding initiatives of the Global South. The idea is to analyze reforming quality assessment through progressive and well-founded methodologies. This is a project funded by the International Development Center, Research Center, the IISc from Canada. And we are also working in a group on academic publishing and scientific evaluation, registered in S-Science platform in collaboration with the Spanish Higher Council for Scientific Research, the project Oliva from Argentina, at the University of Cuyo. And last, FOLEC and CLACSO are in collaboration with NRES as regards the evaluation in social sciences and humanities. So this is our agenda that we would like to discuss and link with the open science movement. And here you have all the links to our site and our documents in order to strengthen research assessment and open access. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dominique and Dr. Laura, for your very interesting presentation on actionable steps that you have taken both at the regional and the international stages, and for highlighting some of the things that Dr. Rebecca has raised, and also proposing in actionable terms the steps that the Latin American and Caribbean experience has shown, and for also highlighting some of the challenges that you faced in this 20-year experience, if I may say, and for highlighting the dire difference between usefulness or relevance versus reward and prestige in our fields of social science and humanities. Before I open up the floor for questions, and we have several very interesting questions and observations, I would like to, if you want, the panelists to respond to each other's presentations, because several interesting ideas have been proposed. If you would like to start off, maybe Dr. Rebecca Darley may respond to the presentations made by Dr. Dominique and Dr. Laura, and vice versa.
Thank you, and thank you both. That was a really very, very interesting presentation. I was extremely surprised at how many parallels I found as you were talking. I was nodding a lot off camera at your, particularly at your impassioned plea for a world without article processing charges, which I think is as unrealistic for scholars in the humanities and social sciences in the UK as it is, as you say, for the developing world more generally. But I was also really fascinated by the extent to which universities working together happens in your world. That was very inspiring for me. We have many umbrella organizations in the UK that supposedly speak for universities, but none of them seems to be able to command the kind of consensus and the practical, the minute responses to what is required as building the repositories that you're talking about, monitoring those repositories, and thinking about what long-term process across regions might be. I found that really very inspirational. I get the impression that, particularly thinking about the second part of that presentation, Dr. Rovelli's presentation, that there is a similar anxiety in your context about the increased metrification of research and the pressure that that puts on outputs. But I was also really struck by the relationship between language quality and publicity. That is one of the big challenges that UK higher education in general doesn't face, or faces in different directions. Because our publishing language is by default English, we don't have to make the choice usually between the publicity that can generate for our research, the public transparency it has, and the audiences that we reach. On the other hand, I think it makes the UK higher education establishment increasingly parochial. There is increasingly less publication in languages other than English, and increasingly less engagement in publications by UK academics with publications not in English. And I think that drives a very, very worrying trend towards, I was really impressed by the idea of the invisibility of research that goes out in high profile, high prestige journals, but is in fact not accessible because not readable by a lot of the people to whom it would matter. And in general, your passion for research mattering spoke deeply to me. So those were my thoughts. I'm sorry, they're not massively organized, but I was really, really struck by how similar some of the things we care about are and how different some of the organizational solutions seem to be.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rebecca. Dr. Dominique or Dr. Laura, if you want to say something.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca. The same thing happened to me. I was surprised, and well, your presentation was so interesting for me, but surprised by some similarities because of other reasons. But we are both thinking about how to save small publishers. And we speak, well, how to save small publishers means to save the voices which are behind those small publishers. So small publishers that are not in the main conversation at local level, but we have to help them. And those are voices who have to do with bibliodiversity, with multilingualism, with research which is done in institutional context that does not have the resources, as you mentioned, Rebecca, in your presentation, to take advantage of all the open access features. In our network, which is mainly in social sciences and humanities, in the art, you can find that. And there's a question in the chat, which asks for, in the art sector, for groups who are working on these issues. And well, the art group in CLACSO's network, the art working group, is mainly on political links of arts and politics, and arts incidents in policies and the possibility for art to contribute. So imagine the output, the research output of this group has nothing to do with our world of, of peer-reviewed journals and repositories. But we need those voices to be part of the conversation in the open science context. And then I was surprised by your concept of save small publishers. And I say we have to save small voices, which can be big in the global sustainable agenda. And then when you said defining open access, no? The parallel, in 2013 in the REF, you were defining open access. Now we are defining open science, and we have again the same challenges. How will be the recommendation of UNESCO? What shape will they take? Are we going to be able this time to put other voices in this discussion about which should be the recommendation of open science? Are we going to privatization to everything, to open science, education, and everything? Or are we going to have public infrastructures and community-led initiatives, outsourcing some aspects and some parts of it to the commercial sector, but not having the commercial sector rule everything from the evaluation to the infrastructures to the big data, everything. So it's an important, the parallel. I was surprised by the parallel with your presentation. And my question was in the chat for you, how the assessment of the quality of the journals, what indicators or what parameters you uses to assess which publications are in the 1 scale or in the 4 scale. This is my question for afterwards, but please, Laura, thank you, Rebecca, for your very interesting presentation.
Thank you, Angie.
I agree. If I can talk, I can speak. I agree with Dominique, Rebecca, your report, your presentation was excellent. We were also, it was very inspiring as regards research evaluation. In my case, I made a focus on that. And it was very useful to know the complexity of the evaluation process and of the publications. I was also wondering, as Dominique, which were the issues considered, because there seems to be quite a wide participation of institutions there, but then some limitations in the dimensions that are considered or its impact on open access. So I would like also to know a little bit more about that. And I think that it's also interesting in what ways this type of research assessment has an influence in research funds, no? And so in what ways quality of research assessment, of research proposals for funding could be assessed in order to better the, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals, the global grant challenges that we have, and other critical situations as COVID-19 from the global south, no? In what ways can we combine research quality with social relevance and open access, good open access indicators? Thank you.
Thank you very much. One of the negatives of having the panelists speak is many of my reserved questions have been answered. So I'm going to dive in and maybe first invite Dr. Jenny Evans to respond or make any other follow-ups, because Dr. Dominique already addressed your question. Dr. Jenny from UT Austin.
Yes, hello. Hi, sorry. So my name's Jenny. I'm at the University of Westminster in London, based in the UK. We've actually done a lot of work with our arts and architecture communities over the past couple of years to look at how we capture and share and make discoverable their research. And what I'm finding, my background is very much as a librarian, is a lot of the arts and humanities or the humanities and social sciences conversations seem to focus very much on a lot of creating and publishing journal and book kind of outputs. But I'm working very much with researchers who are creating artifacts and objects. And what we've learned as part of this process is that actually the infrastructures out there, those open discoverability infrastructures, don't really work for this research. So things like ORCID and DOIs don't reflect the nature of the research. So there's a lot of interest in the UK about how we influence those infrastructures to work better for those researchers. But it is a very UK focused discussion at the moment. So one of the reasons I joined this call today was to actually get to grips with what's going on elsewhere and how we broaden out that discussion. We actually have a university open access press who publishes policy briefs. So I guess that's one kind of thing that we're doing to broaden out how we publish and how we support different types of research. But I wondered whether any of the people or any of the speakers had any ideas about whether or not there were networks that are looking at this. Is practice research, that idea of documenting those applied professional practice processes, is that happening in other parts of the world, and is it something that's come up, or is this something that's just you've got so many other challenges to deal with that it's kind of further down the list? Hopefully that explains my comments.
In our case, Jenny, if you want, I can copy in the chat the web address of CLACSO's working group on art and politics, and maybe you can ask them the question. I was looking at the working group who is coordinated by someone in Chile and Colombia and Argentina. You can send them a mail and ask them, please, in the most simple possible, because they don't know all the language we are using here and the language for technical issues, but maybe they can tell you how they share their output in art, because they are looking for incidents. Art is very much linked to political activity, to social movements. Art goes with social movements, go to the streets, produce art for the streets, for the political activity. So maybe they can tell you how they share those outputs, outputs, so that they are retrievable, findable, visible, and let's hope indexable. But I don't think. But I will put in the chat the contact for the group. It's in Spanish, but you can put it in English. Maybe it's translated automatically. But there you will find the mail, or I put the mail. Jenny, thank you for your question in our case.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was an interesting dimension to think of opening up open access to all intellectual property outputs and not just published work. So this is a question from a panelist to Dr. Rebecca Darley from Professor Lakshman Rao Nagubandi. So he made a remark that it's a very interesting presentation with useful statistics, and his question to you is, what are the likely changes to your study due to the implementation of Plan S in Europe from January 2021?
Yes, I was intrigued by that question, and I confess took a moment to sort of briefly look up Plan S. And the honest answer is I don't think it makes any difference to us at all. Because Brexit has now been implemented, it is unclear that any European Union policies associated with higher education will have any effect on UK government policy at all. Obviously, as researchers, we continue to be very interested in what is going on in the lives and the professional careers of our colleagues. But one of the things that really stands out to me, and particularly stood out when I was listening to your presentations about the situation in Latin America, is that on one level, there is a very sort of close and collegial community between researchers working across Europe. But on the other hand, even before the UK officially withdrew from the European Union, the actual national infrastructures of higher education funding, incentivization, and evaluation are completely different and entirely independent. And so that drives actually very, very different, different calendars, different priorities. So at the moment, I'm not expecting that Plan S will have any effect at all on the official structures of incentivization that regulate my work.
Professor Lakshmana, if you have anything, any follow-up, you may please turn on your audio.
Thank you for your response. I liked it. I know that it is just started a couple of months ago, not even 2 months, it's from January 1st. I have another, I understand, there is another question which I would like to pose see, everywhere, wherever you publish in India, for example, if you have to pay APC like $9,000, $10,000, I mean, an Indian cannot afford. So in that context, people are asking for a hi-fi journal or hi-fi impact factor. But when the article is good, how do we move forward? Do you have any suggestion or solution? This is one. Second question is, why not there are number of government institutions are there? Even take an example in India, thousands are there. Why can't these government institutions start a journal, 1 or 2 journals, because they have a competent researchers? Why can't they start and then make publish the good articles and make them gold open access? What is your suggestion, please? It may be applicable to not only in India, but also maybe many developing countries and developed countries also, because 9,000, 10,000, you were saying 1,500 pounds, you were saying. So this is not a small money. So would you like to please suggest us?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak on that. I don't know if Dominique and Laura might also want to come in on that, but yes, I mean, as you said, we can't afford in India $9,000, $10,000 for article processing charges. I thought neither can I. So I think you're absolutely right there. That shouldn't be a barrier to high impact factor journal publishing. And I'd like to respond to Dominique's question in a moment about how that assessment is done in the UK, because that speaks a little bit to how impact factors work for us. So I think, to me, that cannot be a viable solution. And the idea of 1 or 2 or a selection of government journals is very intriguing. I suppose in both of these cases, I fall back to a position that says, at least for the UK, I can see a possible solution, which is that a government fund is established that pays for article processing charges subject to whatever evaluation they wish to make of the research. Or, as you suggest, an open access set of journals is created by the government, supported by them, and promoted by them. I just don't think there's any chance of that happening. I think public policy in the UK at the moment is moving further and further away from supporting particularly humanities and social science research. There is no history in the UK, at least, of journals being centrally run by anybody. There's a strong history of them being a very autonomous landscape, rather like universities. But in any case, at the moment, the UK government is, I think, not interested in taking on any financial or intellectual liability by involving itself in what universities do in ways that are about promoting research activity. That sounds, I'm sorry, that sounds like such a depressing answer, but that's my honest evaluation at the moment.
But today we have pandemic and we are suffering for want of money, budgets. But your research must guide people. How do we move forward for getting access to the latest knowledge? Because today we are talking about pandemic, and today everybody wants the data that is being created by the vaccine tested data. So similarly, at every point of time, the problems are coming up. So do you suggest some way out, especially, but only problem is in social science and humanities, it is not that urgent. Sciences is very urgent, but even humanities, scientists, social science also, they play a relevant and very crucial play in the societal management. if not today, from maybe after a few months, on the basis of your research, could you tell us what will be the consequence, or what will be the what should be the strategy for providing free access or better access to the research articles?
I really don't know. As I said, I can think of solutions in a world where limited resource is not a factor, but it is, and I think it's going to stay that way. And I mean, so far, the UK government's response to COVID-19 has been to suggest that it is going to further underfund humanities and social sciences in favour of STEM, precisely because of these urgencies that are now playing very well in the public eye. I mean, having said which, I do think, and this is not a solution at all, it's a mitigation to my slightly down answer. I do feel like there is a great deal of human resource and a history of collegiality that continues to frame his humanities and social sciences research. And that is one of the things that has always drawn me to research and that I still love about it. I think a lot of para-open access work goes on through networks of colleagues who get in touch with each other, through websites like academia, as problematic as that may be as a business model, or even legal model. I actually think the idea that you can just reach out to someone and say, hey, can you send me a PDF of your paper? I saw a talk, and 99% of the time, colleagues all over the world will respond very positively to that. I think, as 100 years ago, a lot of what we do relies a lot more on personal networks and on our shared individual commitment to what we do than it does on infrastructure. That maybe shouldn't be the case, but I think it is.
Yeah, last question. Sorry, but please permit me, please. One last.
Professor Lakshmana, maybe come back to you.
No, last, because I will not disturb you. See, today most of the scientists and the researchers do not know about the preprints. What is your suggestion that we are not in a position to publicize the preprints, and the preprints are going to be much more helpful because they give almost 90 to 95% similar data in comparison with the journal published article. So I think, do you think that we need to have a movement like open access movement to similarly publish in the preprint websites? What is your...
At least for the UK, actually, okay, here is one simple fix, a thing that I can say could be done that would make things better. At least in the UK, I don't think it would be technologically very challenging to simply create a central database of preprint material that all institutional repositories fed into. And I think if we just did that one thing, it would automatically make all of that preprint material massively more searchable and accessible than it is right now, sitting in, 250 institutional repositories spread all over the country, many of which are very, very clunky and very difficult to use. So I think that might be a place where we could begin. Yes, looking at those preprint materials that are already available and ways in which we use quite easy technological solutions to make them more searchable.
Thank you. So a very interesting question just popped up is the issue of monographs and books, also mentioned in Dr. Dominique's and Dr. Laura's talks in HSS, and the impact that the open access it has on the open access community and the financial burden it has. I have just seen a quick link shared by Richard Poinder on this. May I invite him to make a few remarks on the Plan S as well as on the OA policy for the UKI?
Of course.
Oh, well, I don't have any definitive views on Plan S, but it seems to me that it does raise some very worrying issues for the development of open access, and the extent to which the UK aligns itself with Coalition S. After all, Ukraine has joined the coalition. That's yet to be seen, but there does seem to be a very definite move at the moment towards an APC model, And the article, that this of course was a Publishers Association report that's been done, so a lot of people will want to take it with a pinch of salt. Certainly open access advocates will, but it does raise questions about who is going to benefit from open access under Plan S type models, and who will be impacted. One of the consequences, they say, will be very much on small publishers, which is what was discussed earlier on. So I think there are good reasons for being concerned about what's happening. And the other point that report makes is that this is going to cost a university, UK universities, a great deal more than under the traditional subscription model. So there are a great many questions that I think are being raised by the development of open access in Europe, and it's very strong fixation on gold open access and the requirement for paying article processing charges. Of course, with the number of transformative agreements we're seeing being developed in Europe, some people say, well, so what, because the author won't have to pay the APC. But if you wanted to look at the costs that universities are having to contribute towards scholarly communication, I think there are great reasons to be concerned, and that this is a development that should be resisted. And it's also worth contrasting with the way that open access seems to have developed, and it continues to develop in the US, where there's a much greater focus on green open access and deposit of articles into repositories. So Europe, in a sense, likes to pride itself on leading the way in open access, but if this is leading the way, then I worry about where it's taking us. So that's what I'd have to say on Plan S and the likely involvement, alignment of the UK with Plan S.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Richard Pointer. Next, we have a very interesting point, a couple of counterpoints from Christian Gutneck, MDPI. May I invite Christian Gutneck to turn on your mic and make your point?
Hello, everyone. Actually, I just moved from the repository side to Science Founder side, now to a publisher. So to a publisher which operates with APCs. And I just wonder a bit, is really the problem with the APC as a model itself, or do we have to discuss about the height of APC itself? I mean, before it was mentioned that an APC could be 9,000 euros. Yes, there are these kind of demands from selectivity publishing sites. I mean, also probably you have heard about the non-profit organization PLOS, which also will introduce high APCs in the next years for PLOS biology and PLOS medicine, about height about $5,000 to $6,000. I mean, this is non-profit. So shouldn't we rather focus on APC as itself rather than discussing what is the right height for APCs? Because there are obviously costs involved. And I guess also if you read blog post from Paul Martin Eve about Open Library Humanities, he also says, okay, you can start maybe small and with some kind of a consortium model, but at some point there are costs involved. So you need someone to have a backup or being able to create IT solutions, and there are costs involved. So probably should focus on the costs rather on the model itself.
Can I comment on Christian? Thank you, Christian.
Go on.
Well, our view from Latin America, where research is publicly funded and where research communication is less than 1% of the cost of research. So why should scholarly communications or research communications be a market in the first place? We should not be speaking about higher APC or lower APC. We should be speaking about why scholarly communication has to be a market. for a region like Latin America, where the main research universities are public universities, so research communication is part of the cost of research. So it's, I like when Rebecca said, well, in social science and humanities, we have human resources, we have mediality, we have networks. So that community is writing the articles and the books, is able to communicate those articles and those books in preprints, in monographs repositories, in institutional repositories. Maybe the problem is not the level of APCs, maybe the problem is in a continuous publishing open science context, where you have communications to give at many points of the research cycle, not only at the end with the book and the article. You need platforms to have research communication at the different moments of the research process in open science. So there's the issue. And we don't want that to be a market. We don't want the big data of the research cycle to be a market, because if not, we are going, well, then it's another story. It's another history. It's another issue. The winners will be the winners. The mainstream will be the only research content available for sustainable development goals. Please tell me how mainstream will solve the water issues in Bolivia, the hunger problems in the northern part of Argentina. I don't understand how we can imagine that. But our researchers in Latin America will not be able to publish in APC mainstream journals at this level, only in the beginning of this story. I agree with Richard's pointer. The question is, where is Plan S taking us? So imagine in a region where we have 10,000 journals that do not charge APCs. It will be so easy for them to start charging APCs. That's the end of the problem. So there will be no more networking, no more collaboration and dedicating part of your academic time to do peer review, to do editing, to help the journal of your community. So when Rebecca said there's a global anger over open access, now I say there's a global anger over open science. I think we are opening the door for an open science that will repeat exactly the same story as 20 years ago started with open access. So I'm glad to know that you are contributing, Christian, with your knowledge to a publisher, to an initiative. But it's our social responsibility to see what we are building. Are we building a global conversation of science, or are we building silos of mainstream privileged institutions and the rest of the world? And the rest of the world is 95% of the world. So that's my anger. Thank you.
May I briefly on that? Sorry, Christian. Yeah.
No, just to say, I to some point of view, I really support your idea. On the other hand, I guess we are all getting older regarding open access. You said it started 20 years ago, and somehow your view, which I principally share, didn't convince many universities, and especially in Europe. I think if you go for Coalition S, I would say it's a process, because how long have we been discussing about moving the money from subscription, because the money is there, to something which could be open access, to platform networks, etc. But we didn't see this happen. So there is somehow a decision of universities, which currently now put still money into subscription publisher, hybrid publisher, that they see we do not want to spend the money for this kind of networks you envision. And there maybe OpenX publisher could be handling with APC, could be something in the middle. So at least we have open access. Of course, I totally agree that this creates new problem, and we really should be careful that it doesn't prevent the same problems again. Certainly.
I think I would respond to the question about APCs slightly differently, being very conscious that I am sort of in the 5% of sort of countries that theoretically have the resource to deal with this. So the problems are of a slightly different shape, but and also, yes, in principle, I completely agree with the fact that none of this should be marketized. But I'm also very conscious that I have grown up entirely in a marketized university. I find your vision extremely compelling, but I'm also hostage to the world I've grown up in. And so for me, the question is, even if we are in a marketized world of this, who pays those APCs? Even if we make them lower, at the moment, it's me out of my pocket. It's nobody else. And by the end of my month, you know, with the charges I already pay to do my job, I commute a very long distance. I pay out of my pocket for most of my research travel. I pay for my own books. I can't afford it, and I won't pay it. You know, a world in which someone told me I had to pay to publish the articles that are required for me to keep my job is a world in which I quit my job. And I wouldn't have said that 5 years ago, but I would now.
Please invite Madan, who is very passionate on this topic, to pitch in.
Yeah, actually, paying money to publish, even one has money. For example, in India, some scientists who are conscious about their self-respect, they say, I think paying money to publish, they feel they are dishonored because they are donating their knowledge, time, everything for the journal. And in addition to that, you have to support the journal's revenue and shareholders' revenue. All that and all is not acceptable for many scientists here. In general, it creates a kind of ethical problem. That paying money to publish will lead to, you know, anybody can pay money that they'll be able to publish. That is one angle of it. Okay, the APC journals penalize scientists who are writing papers which are publishable. I think you are penalizing the scientists who are writing good papers, and you are doing the same charge free of cost for those scientists whose papers are not really acceptable. So in what way this is a correct model? You know, this model, unless it supports journals' revenue, other than that, what is in it in this model is about? I think journals should work hard to make their revenue. I think through subscription, reaching out libraries, convincing them, and then have a decent low-cost subscription charges. So this open access APC costs, it's easy money for publishers. That is one answer to this particular you know, approach of APCs that many Indian scientists look at. It is certainly not affordable for you know, when science funding is low. Particularly humanities and social research are virtually not funded. Even that is the case in England, you know, UK, you know, India is, you know, unquestioned. There is no question at all. I think there is no fund for research. First of all, you have to support researchers, you have to support institutions, you have to help them do research first. So that is more important in this APC discussions. And second question is, the one area that we are not discussing about is the open monographs. I mean, the monographs publishing is an important norm in some fields of social sciences and humanities research here. They don't bother about publishing articles in journals. They write books to claim priority of ideas and other things. In India, the scenario is they want to get their books published by Oxford University Press or Cambridge University Press, or the university presses run in America or elsewhere. That is what is their motive. But surprisingly, I see from a small group of faculty members in UK, they come up with open book publishing, and they want to make research accessible to all. So what is happening in UK is very interesting for me here. Should we have to insist universities start presses locally, and we have to encourage open monograph presses, and we have to find some cost recovery system for selling print copies and then making the online copy web-wide accessible to all. Would that be a good model? So in what way we are going to make monographs open to all possible users? That is my question. Rebecca,
Dr. Dominique, Madam?
Rebecca, yeah.
Sorry, I thought Rebecca was going to speak. Madam, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Very, very interesting. I also think it's an ethical issue. It's very much an ethical problem. And we really need, I agree, we really need to fund social science research. Not think about funding APCs, because one APC covers many months of work in social sciences in Paraguay, in Ecuador, in many places of our region. So I think it's an ethical problem. And on monographs, well, then Laura will surely comment, but the issue is, how do we assess, how do we evaluate research? If we only reward publishing in mainstream journals, we are punishing the value of books. So we need to assess the quality of the research output, independent if it is a preprint, if it is a book, if it is a journal article, if it is a data set. We are looking for quality. So we need to build that peer review value chain to ensure peer review of research outputs in any format that we consider that is a contribution to our society. So we need to build the production chain of the peer review process outside the commercial sector. Why are we dedicating, well, I don't do it anymore, but why are we dedicating to peer review in commercial journals? That time, those 10 hours of time, we could dedicate to peer review in our own journals to help them build quality in our repositories. So I think in CLACSO, we have started, we have more than 3,000 books in open access, but those books are not considered in the review process. So we need to improve that. It's all about reviewing the research evaluation systems, because we are in a trap, because the system, Scopus and Web of Science, are based on 20,000 journals, and those define everything. Well, in open science, it can't be like that anymore, because if not, we are going to solve the main issues, dramatic issues of the 95% of the population of the world. It will lack the voices of those communities. So the books have to be valued in the evaluation procedures. This is my answer.
Yeah. Can I add just a comment,
yes, Dr.
please?
Yes.
Yes, I agree with Dominique on this issue. Particularly in Latin America, we had a wide range of publishing houses public, no, from public institutions, public universities. So what we need is, and they are quite professional in their labor, so, but what we need is to invest more public funds on that area of universities, such as other areas like teaching, like researching. Yeah, we need to invest in that area to enforce the public academic publishing, and also to make a dialogue with the funding agencies to recognize that production, and at the same time, as Dominique was saying, building, reviewing, and open assessment procedures in those publications. And we are not so far from that stage. We are working on that issue with governments, with publishing houses, public publishing houses, and we are trying to strengthen that virtuous cycle, but we need investment. Yeah, but we have a very good and high professional quality in that area.
Perfect. We're running out of time, so I will close with one last question, which I think has been waiting for a while, but might tie the whole conversation together very well and bring the perspective of all three panelists. It's from Dr. Moumita Kohli. So she asks, so she starts off by saying that research evaluation is based on prestige and impact factors in STEM fields as well, just as in HSS. And she's asking, because we're talking about inclusive assessment and the impact of science in society, the broader open science vision and relevance of research to the region, as well as the relevance of historical ideas, as with small learned societies, how can possibly the social science research community can contribute to build an assessment framework for the STEM fields in largely. So it's a question about imagination, I believe. Your responses?
Well, I have a very short answer. The STEM found a one number, the impact factor. Well, in social sciences, we cannot have a one number evaluation. So we have to be very creative, as you say, Venkat. We have to be more creative. We have to accept that the world is a bit more complex than one number. That's my answer.
I looked at that question when it first, oh, sorry, Dr. Rovelli, do you want to go first?
No, you go first.
I'll leave the last word to you in that case. Yeah, when that question first turned up in the chat, I have to admit it frightened me slightly. And I've been thinking about it ever since. It's a really great question. I suppose my own take on it, which is not a total answer, but that is in order to, it's very close to we need not to obsess about one number, but in order to foster global equality and global discussion, we might actually need to be less obsessed with global scales of evaluation. I think there's something incredibly reductive about the idea of saying these two articles produced in completely different contexts about different problems, you know, which one is the best article about the medieval period, which is 1,000 years across the whole world? And it's a pointless question. It's a question that if a student put it to you, you tell them to go away and come up with a better question. But I don't think that necessarily regional national structures of incentivization work terribly well either. And I wonder whether where we need to be starting from is what we are trying to evaluate, and then think about how that suggests answers that are connected to scale and community building. And that's where I would begin, but it's by no means a complete answer yet.
Briefly, I think that the social science and humanities have a big contribution also to think with the STEAM sciences, new procedures and indicators to assess social impacts through other products beyond publications. Yeah, it's a little bit, as Dominique was saying, more complex, and also remind that social science and humanities in this context of pandemia, COVID-19, make a double contribution, not only to tackle educational, economic, health problems in our society, but also we produce a reflexivity on the science procedures that are being enforced during this short period, an intense period. So our role is a key role that can nourish other sciences. So I think we have a key, a central role to rethink these disseminating science procedures through open access and also assessment procedures.
Thank you very much. These have been some very scintillating ideas, presentations, and a lively discussion as well. Because we're running out of time, I would ask Madan to say a few closing words, and then the final words are with the panelists if they would like to make any closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venkat, Dominique, Laura, and Rebecca for your time. And on behalf of Asim Premji University, I would like to thank you for your time, and the presentations were enlightening, really. Many of the issues related to open access to humanities and social sciences researchers as scholars, as advocates of open access. I think it was a great learning participating in this symposium. So one thing I come to know is, there is a scarcity of funds, and the APC paying is not affordable. And I'm really surprised scientists pay their money from packets and publishing papers to be part of the research evaluation exercises and everything. So the repositories are the best way. As the quick fixes available is that we have to open our research through the green route, where the typesetting, issue number, volume number mentioning is easily addressable in the technologically sound world that we have. That should not be a problem with DOI numbers or something. And in the preprints or postprints, we will be able to mention that this article is published in this particular journal. And at least the copy of the content is openly accessible to all possible would-be users, probably the starting point where the humanities and social science community should start with. And here the cited half-life problem is one important factor, where even if you agree embargo enforced by publisher also, it's okay. At least a few years later, the research will come open. But recent developments in Plan S, where the scholars are requested to retain their rights, at least on their postprints, so that they can make it open as soon as a paper is accepted. And this making of open access is not going to dent the publisher's revenue at all, or there is no such evidence at present available. These are all hypothetical fears that are roaming around for about 20 years that it may happen. Once we get the 100% open access available in repositories, it may happen. But till that point, there is no worry about the publishers will lose revenue if the publishers allow the individual scholars to make their papers open through their repositories. That is what I feel. That is the way out for humanities and social science research to come to the if they want to make their papers visible to all possible would-be users. Otherwise, restricting it with university press publications and then paying money to publish and all, I think that we will not see a kind of inclusive world. And many libraries in India where social science research is taught, social sciences are taught, or humanities are taught, they can't afford even a single book of university press books. We have 900 plus universities in our country. Only a few handful of universities will be able to pay money to get books. Our libraries are not well equipped. What I would suggest is that humanities and social science scholars should get together and try to use the web and related technologies more cleverly and reach more audiences. And I think they should more worry about the afterlife of their publication, how it is really used by others in many ways. I think we have to start somewhere. In India, we have just started the discussion. We discuss more about the science, technology, and medicine open access more and more. And we have just started the discussions. All your points will be gathered, and we are going to develop a kind of advocacy document, which we are going to send it to our policy makers here. And with that point, I would like to thank you all for your time and contribution in this symposium. If you have any final words, I think that you are welcome to.
Thanks to you both, Madam Muthu and Venkat Nadella, and thanks to the Azim Premji University on behalf of CLACSO. I also learned very much. It's important that we share our experiences, and I learned from the presentation from Rebecca. Thank you very much. And thank you all, and take care and keep safe.
Yeah, I would just like to second those thanks. This has been a really intellectually exciting opportunity, and I think it's fantastic that you're running this seminar series. And thank you to Dominique and Laura. I've likewise come away with a lot to think about.
Thank you.
Same. Thank you, Rebecca, Dominique, Nadella, and Madam Muthu. It was a pleasure to be here today, and it was very stimulating, and only continue working on this dialogue between open access movement and research assessment. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Venkat. I will call you.
Okay. Thanks, Madan.